Okay guys, we are going to go through the mid-year. This is mid-year 2021. You should have it with you. Please have it with you and have your work with you as we go through the answers. I'm going to go through all 4 essay questions. On the way, I will point out some common mistakes, okay? So you can pause the video and then have a look at your own script so you know what is going on. Okay, without further ado, let's go into some general issues about the essays first. Okay, now firstly, time management. We all know that the exam is 100 minutes and the essay is worth 20 out of 50 marks. If you split it up, it means you must spend 40 minutes on your essay. If you don't spend 40 minutes on your essay, you will not be able to provide a good essay, and as such, you will be unable to score as many marks as possible. Let me point you back to the marks. This is 8 marks and 12 marks out of your SBQ questions. SBQ questions are 5, 5, 6, 6, 8. Which is the most important question? Obviously, this is the most important question. The SBQ alone, okay, if you go and spend all your time on these questions, and you give up your 12-mark question, you're not going to go anywhere, okay? So you must do your essay. Now, what if you tell me, Mr. Low, but I can't finish my essay, I'm too slow, okay? What do I do then? It's okay, you don't have to complete all, you don't have to score 20 marks in order to get a distinction. So how can you get the most marks per unit time? Let me explain the marking scheme. Alright, now for an explain question, which is 8 marks, and an evaluative question, which is 12 marks, this is how it goes. You must give me 2 points, right? So if you L1, 1 to 2 marks, is if you identify 2 points. L2, L2 3 and L2 4 is if you describe 1 point. Whereas L3 5 to 6 is if you can explain 1 point. L3 7 to 8 is, or they call it L4, is if you can explain 2 points. So obviously, if you have no time, where you should go is here. Don't go and describe 2 points when you can explain 1 point. That way, you only need to write 1 point. You don't have to go through 2 points, okay? Dumping information is useless. I say again, anybody who got ATQ on the script, it means you are dumping information. You are not answering the question. That is why even though you write 2 paragraphs, 2 points worth of work, you are only getting L2. Explain 1 point, move on with your life. Same thing here, okay? L1 is for description, okay? Is if you only can identify. Now, L2 3 to 4 and L2 5 to 6. This one you must deal with the given factor. They already gave you the factor, deal with it. You have no choice but deal with it. Okay? Now, for L2 3 to 4, this is only if you describe all the factors. If you describe all 3 factors, you only get 4 marks. Okay? But as long as you explain 1 factor, you will get L2 5 to 6. And then you have L3 7 to 8 and L3 9 to 10, right? This is 2 factors explain and 3 factors explain. So if you have no time, you give me 2 factors. Okay, if you have no time, shoot for this. Okay, now some of you may be asking, Mr. Low, then how about the conclusion? How do I score full marks? Listen, this conclusion, you must have 3 factors fully done plus a good conclusion. Now, the reality is, do we need these 2 marks to score an A? No, you do not need these 2 marks. Okay, it might sound like, you mean I don't have to get the whole thing correct? Yes, correct. Okay, if you look at me, look at what I'm showing you now. If all you need to do, you can write 3 points And you could get 5 marks and 7 marks. That is 12 upon 20. That is a solid B. And that is a very good base to build into an A. Okay, or if you're struggling to pass, this is what you can do in order to make sure that you get the most amount of marks for the amount of time you have. Okay, so you have 40 minutes to write at least 3 points. 1 point for your 8-mark essay and 2 points for your 12-mark essay. Okay, so that is what you need to focus on. Now, let's go to the questions proper. I'm going to go through them one by one. Okay, let's have a look at Stalin's Great Terror. Okay, explain why Stalin started the Great Terror after rising to power. So I know it's an explain question. I need to give cause and effect. I know my focus is Stalin. Okay, and I know I have Great Terror to talk about. Okay, and I know my chronological point is after rising to power. So this is after 1928. But I also know this from Great Terror because I know Great Terror is 1934 to 1938, right? This is the Great Terror, okay? So now, explain why Stalin started the Great Terror. I cannot explain my cause and effect until I know what the Great Terror is, okay? This is a classic kind of question where they give you an event and you must explain from the effect. You can work out the cause. Why? Only if I know what the Great Terror did, then I can figure out why the Great Terror is there. Okay? So, what do I know about the Great Terror? What is the Great Terror? Great Terror I know is a time of purges. So I have purges. I have show trials. Who died? Army officials. Intellectuals. Okay? In fact, even Communist Party members, right? So all these people were killed by Stalin. They'll put away the purges, show trials into the gulag, right? Put you into the gulag, alright? So this is what is going on in the Great Terror. So now I ask myself, why did Stalin do all this? I have my information, but I also need to know what Stalin did. So I know that Stalin is a dictator, right? He's a total dictator. He wants complete control. So what I am doing here when I look at the questions, I'm consolidating what I know. Now I know what kind of information I need in order to put my essay together. So I need to have one point and my second point. So how do I figure out what my first point and my second point are? I know Stalin wants complete control, but what does he want complete control of? He wants complete control of the Communist Party as well as the entire country. So I can split my points into internal control of Communist Party and external control and control of the USSR, right? He wants to be able to dominate the country, okay? So this is then after, so I have my large point. I need to then make sure that I have evidence to support each point. Where can my evidence go? Okay, so obviously internal control of Communist Party, I will talk about within the Communist Party what is going on. So I know that Stalin wants internal control of the Communist Party. Why? Okay, so that he can establish himself as the top dog, right? Sole ruler. Okay, so who did he need to get rid of? Okay, firstly, you can say he got rid of Trotsky. Okay, you can talk about the purges within the party. Okay, some good examples would be Zinoviev, Kamenev. Okay, how he got rid of them. And what does all these do? Okay, it leaves Stalin as the sole leader, which gives him control over the Communist Party. So by showing this, okay, by emphasizing the effect, which is that it leaves him in sole control. That means he's the only person left. That is how I prove that he's trying to shoot for internal control of the Communist Party. A lot of y'all just gave me the work until here. But that doesn't tell me why he did the Great Terror, why he conducted the Great Terror. So you're stuck here. Even if you give me all the details about Great Terror, you give me 5,000 words about what happened during Great Terror, you are stuck at L24. Okay? So this is what you have to give me. Now, let's look at the next point, which is about the control of the USSR, right? So now I know I have purges, so I have... so what does he need? He needs to eliminate resistance. You notice that I do not write establish himself as the prime candidate or the most important person. Why? Because then I run the risk of having too similar a point. So he wants to eliminate resistance to his rule. Okay, and how does this happen? By purges, okay, by show trials, to remove elements of society, which might rebel, which might criticize him, right? So I already have my detail, purges and show trials. Then I talk about who? Intellectuals. I can talk about army officials. Okay, so on and so forth. Then what does this mean? It means that you can say, some of y'all talk about creating a culture of fear. That is good. Okay, so this removal creates a culture of fear, which then results in people not speaking up against Stalin. And that is why now Stalin is in complete control. Okay, now this works. So let me revise what we are doing. We are actually looking first at the question. We are figuring out what is the information we have available. Then we start putting it together. Okay, don't just sit there and regurgitate whatever you have. You must answer the question. Alright, now let's move on to the evaluative question. It says Trotsky's unpopularity was the main reason that led to Stalin's rise. Okay, come, keywords. I know that this question is a main reason kind of question, so it's evaluative. I need my 3 points. So somewhere I will have point 1, point 2, and point 3. Okay, and I know that my endpoint is Stalin's rise to power. And I know one of my points must be Trotsky's unpopularity. Okay, now the question is, of course, led to, I must show my cause and effect, right? Okay, hold on. Okay, so now the first thing to figure out is what are my other 2 points. By studying the textbook, I know that I have the non-disclosure of Lenin's testament. And I also have Stalin's manipulations. Okay, now, can I just point out that all of you are very good at mugging the content and dumping it to me, but you never tell me what is the effect of Trotsky's unpopularity. Okay, so let me show you how to break this down. So if you talk about Trotsky's unpopularity, you can first talk about his position. Okay, so his position, okay, I'll go through the content first. Trotsky is the leader of Red Army, right? Okay, you can also talk about Trotsky's idea of global revolution. But if you just talk about this, there's no point. It's just information. What is the point of this information? This makes him unpopular where? Within the communist leadership. Therefore, what is the big deal about this unpopularity? It means that it removes Trotsky as a candidate for leadership. Which means that if I remove Trotsky as a candidate for leadership, it clears the way for Stalin to take advantage. Which is why it allows him to rise to power. Okay? Again, many people stop here. If you stop here and you only describe Trotsky's unpopularity, you are not telling me the significance of Trotsky's unpopularity, which is the whole thing. That is the important part. Okay? Content alone does not lead you anywhere. There must be some kind of evaluation. I say again, evaluation is not in the textbook. You must come up with it by yourself. Okay, now let's go. Non-disclosure of Lenin's testament. Now, everybody can tell me that what is Lenin's testament about. You can tell me that it said Stalin was not a good leader, right? And everybody can tell me that testament was not reviewed. Point of clarification, Stalin was not the one who decided that the testament could not be reviewed. Okay, the point is that Stalin was not in control at that point. It was a group decision, so don't make it sound like Stalin was in control. Okay, so again, everybody can tell me this, but what is the significance of the testament? Remember that the testament said that Stalin should not be the Secretary General. So the impact of not revealing the testament is that Stalin retained his position as Secretary General. This is the important point. So what is the big deal about Stalin being the Secretary General? With the Secretary General powers, he can appoint and remove members of the party, which then allows him to... Oh dear, I got no space. Which then allows Stalin to fill party with those who support him and that is why he gets to power, because there is nobody in the Communist Party who can speak up against him or is resistant against him. Okay? So that is what is going on. So now, we have already used the Secretary General thing, we have already used the Trotsky's unpopularity thing. So now we have to talk about Stalin's manipulations. The best thing you can use to talk about Stalin's manipulations is all your favorite thing. You can talk about Stalin as the chief mourner. Some of y'all were able to talk about how he manipulated the rest of the party. That's good. So red versus white. But the easiest example to use is Stalin as chief mourner at Lenin's funeral. Okay, what is the point of this? If you go back and you talk about he gave Trotsky the wrong date, okay, everybody loves this piece of information. But that piece of information plays into removing Trotsky as a candidate for leadership. That is not the point. The point here is that he is the chief mourner. He looks like the natural successor. Now imagine this. We are, it is 1924. We are at the Kremlin, okay, we are at Lenin's tomb, okay, and what do we see? We see Stalin there. He looks like he's the next leader. Naturally, what is the result? That means the people will support Stalin. When he has popular support, that is how he gets to his rise to power. Okay, so this is what is going on. This is how you put your essay together. Again, let me emphasize that if you only stop here, if you are purely descriptive, you will only get L24 even if you wrote all 3 points. Please, please, please evaluate. The question is an evaluative essay. Okay? Now, if we are talking about conclusions, Let me say that if you are just rearranging your points and you say that all three factors led to the rise of Stalin, hello, you are not saying anything new. That is not a conclusion. There is this thing called repetition, useless. Okay? The conclusion should make an evaluation of which is the main reason, which is the most important reason. Okay, don't just repeat. Which one carries the most weight? Okay, so most likely you will talk about either the non-disclosure because he's the Secretary General, or you can talk about his political manipulations because that's how he was able to come to power. Okay, so that's what I would suggest to use as the conclusion. But remember, there is no point doing a conclusion if you haven't done your three factors first. So focus on getting two factors done. All right. Now, let's move on to this question. Explain why there is distrust between the USA and USSR during World War II. I know it is a Cold War question. Now, let's break down what I know about the Cold War. So, I know this is superpowers. During World War II is 1939 to 1945. So, any tensions, any kind of distrust must stop at 1945. I cannot talk about anything up beyond 1945. Okay, so if you go and talk about Korea or satellite states, you're instantly gone. You must talk about during World War II. Okay, so the obvious point is the delay in the opening of the second front. Okay, and the second one is you can talk about the disagreements over post-World War II Europe. Okay, these are the big events. Now, how does it create? Of course, the end point is creates distrust, right? So I must have a cause and effect. The first thing I must do is to describe Okay, not you must tell me what is important first, right? The details. So I know that 1940 Germany attacks USA. Attacks USSR. 1941 Pearl Harbor, but only in 1944 USA opened second front. The important thing here is to say that USSR perceives delay as intentional. Let me caution you against writing that the USA purposely delayed it by 2 years, 3 years. No, they didn't. It is impossible to go from a non-war footing to a war footing in the course of 6 months. It is impossible to do that. So the important thing here anyway is about the perception of the USSR. Okay? And why is it intentional? To weaken the USSR by forcing USSR to bear the brunt of the German assault. And that is why there is distrust. Now, a lot of you all got L35, but you must talk about why the USSR perceived it as a threat, because they were being forced to take all the damage. They were forced to tank the damage, while USA, they thought the USA just kelka and sit there. The truth is they were not. The USA was already fighting. You must remember the USA was fighting in 2 theaters of war. Okay, but that is how you figure it out. Okay, so if you talk about the disagreements over post-World War II Europe, you must first talk about ideological conflict, right? But if you just describe to me communism versus democracy, that is not telling me anything. What you have to do is to talk about how this is expressed in Europe. Okay, you want to talk about Berlin, I can accept that. You want to talk about the Eastern European states, I also can accept that. As long as you discuss anything that was at Yalta and Potsdam, that's fine. And what is the point of this? This shows that the superpowers cannot cooperate. And when you do this, then it will create distrust. Okay, you could talk about atomic bomb, but that's a bit iffy because it's during World War II. Okay, if you were able to talk about how the USA used the atomic bomb without telling the USSR, that is fine as well. Okay, but that is okay lah. That's acceptable lah. Okay, now we move on to the final question about containment. Okay, now this is a tricky question, but it is also a classic Cold War question. What is the keyword here? Containment. This is my given factor. Oops. And then I need 2 more points, right? Now, the keyword here, ladies and gentlemen, is the worsening of tensions. A lot of people talk about tensions, but you don't talk about worsening. So you must talk about worsening. Okay? So if you look at it, you have to think about worsening as this. If I am fighting with you and I'm just slapping you and you are just slapping me, then that is just a continuation of the fight. The worsening is when I slap you and then you pull out a gun and you start to shoot me. So that is worsening. That's when the conflict becomes worse. Okay. So worsening, we remember that it can happen in 2 ways: in terms of scale or in terms of intensity. So in terms of scale, we're talking about the number of people, number of countries involved. Intensity, we're talking about the degree of the conflict. Okay. So if we look at it, containment, what is the problem of containment? Containment, I must think about it first. Containment is a policy to push back okay, and I know that it manifested in the Marshall Plan, Truman Doctrine, right? Okay, very good. So let me work this out first, because I can't decide what are all the worsening of relations if I don't figure out my given factor first, because this question is so broad. Okay, so what is the point of the Marshall Plan or Truman Doctrine? All this is economic warfare, right? And what does it do? It is designed to influence Europe, right? And there was what was the response? The Soviet response was Comintern and Comecon. Now, where is the worsening? The worsening is not in the data. The worsening is in this. This shows that now the Cold War is now fought over Europe. This is the worsening of the tensions. Okay, so what is the worsening here? There is a new dimension, which is the economic dimension of the Cold War. Okay, good. So now I have a conclusion here about that I know I must talk about the economic dimension, which means naturally there must be some other dimension about that, maybe a military dimension or an ideological dimension, so on and so forth. Okay, so if I think about it, I probably have to talk about the Berlin blockade. Okay, but I don't want just to say the Berlin blockade. The Berlin blockade is an event, it's not a main reason. Okay, so I would say the formation of opposing military alliances. And then I would talk about NATO, and that is being countered by the Warsaw Pact. Of course, I give the details: 1955, NATO 1949. Okay, and what is the significance of this? This means that now the Cold War involves European states. Okay, any conflict could result in World War III. Why? Because now it's not just the USA versus the USSR, but it is the whole of the NATO bloc versus the Warsaw Pact. Okay, and so what is my conclusion here? Might have a new dimension, which is military, and I also have an increase in scale. Okay, another thing I could potentially talk about is the nuclear arms race. Why? Because again, I can talk about a new dimension, which is nuclear. Okay, so I can talk about the Soviet atomic bomb used in 1945, right? And then I can talk about the Soviet program, Soviet atomic bomb, 1949. And what is the result of this? I have the nuclear arms race, and my military threat increases. If my guns get bigger and bigger, of course my conflict gets worse lah. That is why I can say that the dimensions of my conflict increase. Okay, and that is how I would frame my response to this question. I will show that there are always new dimensions to the conflict, and that is why it is worsening in scale. Okay, so now I come to the question of what is the main reason. Okay, now I wouldn't put nuclear because nuclear is actually a product of ideological differences. Okay, so I might choose one of my conclusions to be containment. If this is the most important, it is the main reason, it's because it is the root policy. Okay, remember political shapes economic shapes military. Okay, so if that is the root, then that is where it comes from. That is why it is the main reason. Very good. I could also say the NATO versus Warsaw Pact is the most important, because what does it do? It moves it from simply superpower versus superpower. Instead of just two countries, I now have two blocks instead of two countries. So that is the main issue, that it has made the Cold War go global. That is the answer that I would provide. Okay, so that is how you frame your question. Remember, the keyword here is worsening. Please answer the question. Okay, so same thing, please look through. If there are things which you're not sure about, then please come and talk to me about it. Okay, so watch out for the SBQ ones.